Dr. Reardon, thank you for being here. Welcome to Live from Bed.
Hey, Jay, thanks for having me.
So you are the Vagina Whisperer.
This is correct.
We all could use our vaginas whispered to a little more. I think we all could get in contact with our vaginas a little more. So first of all, I just went through your Instagram like for 4 hours because before we even booked this, like I've been a fan of yours because I just didn't realize how much I didn't realize about my pelvic floor and my vagina, right? Like, do a lot of people say that?
Absolutely. You were totally not alone. And that's one of the reasons I think my Instagram account, The Vagina Whisperer, has really taken off over the years because we're never educated about this part of our body. Yet we go through so many physical transformations with pregnancy, birth, menopause, even monthly menstrual cycles where our pelvic floor is changing and we might start experiencing symptoms like urinary leakage or painful sex or even tailbone pain. And we don't realize that our pelvic floor muscles are related.
So I remember being in high school, and I'm sure it was for the purpose of being tight for boys or something stupid. But I remember the idea of Kegels being introduced to my friend group, right? And it would be like, okay, when you are halfway midstream, stop peeing, like hold your pee. Like it was like all these like myths and weird things about Kegels. Then, of course, there was like that whole era of like the balls people would insert.
Oh,
in
yeah.
their
Like
vaginas.
Kegel balls or Benoit
Yes.
balls. Yes.
So are Kegels real? What are they? How soon is too early to start thinking about them? And what is it for? Like, what are they for?
Totally. So, I grew up in the generation as well where Kegels was all that we heard about. It was do your Kegels for better sex, to
Yeah.
stop leaking urine, for tighter vaginas. And Kegels are pelvic floor muscle contractions. So, your
Okay.
pelvic floor is a basket of muscles that sits at the bottom of your pelvis. It has the opening to let urine exit, the vaginal opening for vaginal intercourse, vaginal birth and menstruation, and then the anal opening. And this muscle also is like a hammock and it supports your organs. So, when you do a Kegel contraction, you're closing those sphincters, you're tightening the vagina, you're lifting your organs. But what's really important is this muscle also has to relax. So if you walk around like tightening your vagina or sucking in your stomach all day, you're like overactivating that muscle and it can lead to tension, which can actually lead to things like leakage or pain or
Mm.
painful intercourse. So it's really much more about like what type of exercise does your pelvic floor need. A lot of people
Mm.
do need Kegels for strengthening, but others need relaxation and stretching and massage for their pelvic floor muscles to relax so they can empty their bowels or bladder or, even for vaginal birth or pain-free intercourse.
Okay, so it can be for like all of those things. Basically, we've all heard our parents or our moms or even friends that have had babies say like, "Oh, I can't go on the trampoline," or "I can't laugh too
Yes.
hard or I'll pee," or all of those things. That's weak pelvic floor muscles, right?
Most often it's weak pelvic floor. Sometimes it can be pelvic floor tension where like the muscles are so tight that they can't contract well. And then we need to focus on relaxation. In my book, Floor, that I just put out last summer, it talks you through like, okay, which type of pelvic floor do I have? Do I have a tense pelvic floor and I need relaxation? Do I need strengthening because my pelvic floor is weak? Or do I need a combination of both? I think what's really unfortunate is that, we've chalked up these symptoms like leakage with jumping or, laughing as normal for women when they are aging or after giving birth, but they're not normal. They're common, but they're not normal and they're totally treatable. And these problems don't get better with aging or more babies. They actually just tend to get worse. So it's just super important women know that resources and help are available to address pain and leakage.
Okay, so what are like some like let's say you are newly pregnant or are not pregnant yet, but just want so first of all, is one of the incentives that like it would make birth less painful theoretically?
So, I actually love that pelvic floor therapy. As a pelvic floor therapist, we're seeing a lot of women during pregnancy now because they want to prepare their bodies for birth and they want to know how to recover postpartum. Pregnancy is a huge physical transformation for women, and they are given like zero guidance on how to navigate that. Things like back pain or hip pain or sciatica because your ligaments are softening as your pelvis expands and opens to support a growing baby. We thought those are just like normal and you have to deal with it. Again, very treatable. What happens during pregnancy is your pelvic floor, that basket of muscles, gets stretched out and lengthened. Your pelvis is expanding, your abdominal wall muscles are expanding, and your pelvic floor muscle is stretching to support a growing baby. During pregnancy, you'll get these emails that are like, your baby's the size of a blueberry, then it's the
Yeah.
size of an avocado, then it's the size of a watermelon. Well, if you think about a hammock, supporting a blueberry or an avocado, it's not going to change that much. But if you put a watermelon in a hammock, it's going to
Terrifying.
sink down, it's going to get stretched out, it's going to, be not as supportive. And that's ultimately what happens to your pelvic floor. So regardless of which method of birth you have, vaginal or cesarean, you will have pelvic floor changes that usually include things like urinary leakage, frequent urination, incomplete bladder emptying, constipation, and what we also call pelvic organ prolapse, which is when your organs aren't as supported as we'd like them to be, and they kind of cause a lot of pressure in the vagina. So that's common, again, all treatable. During pregnancy, doing pelvic floor exercises and core exercises are very helpful. So it's important to integrate those in. But when you get closer to, your third trimester, you really want to focus on relaxation and lengthening. Because for a
Oh,
vaginal birth, you want your pelvic floor muscles to relax. You don't want them to be
right.
super tight. We want them to be lengthened and relaxed to get out of the way so that baby can come down the birth canal.
Okay, so those would be 2 separate types of exercises that you would do, right?
Totally.
So what are like some, yeah, that you could do and like for to strengthen and then to lengthen and soften?
So for strengthening, Kegels are part of it. You want to, and Kegels, a lot of women don't even know how to do them
Let's
properly.
talk
We're
about
like,
that. Like what,
right,
yeah, like am I doing I don't know, like I could do it right now. Like you just tighten your vagina or you what?
right. Because this muscle is like a basket, you want to squeeze the pelvic floor and lift it up. The way that I cue people to do it is sit up nice and tall, have your feet flat on the ground. And I want you to think about sipping up a smoothie with your vagina. Like you're
Oh,
sipping up. It's not a squeezing or a tightening. It's like you're going to inhale and on the
yeah.
exhale, sip up with your vag. And do you feel that kind of lift off from the
Yeah.
chair? That is
Yes.
a Kegel contraction.
Oh.
So it's like your vagina, your butthole, your urinary sphincter, they're all kind of lifting and squeezing together. And then you relax completely.
Oh, okay.
So
Wow.
a Kegel is a contraction and a relaxation.
Okay.
But you can also do longer hold contractions where you hold for 5 or 10 seconds. That works the endurance part of the muscle. You can do quick contractions where you squeeze and relax. That helps with like leakage with coughing and sneezing and things like that.
Okay.
And then you want to do Kegels in different positions. Like you don't just leak sitting in your chair all day. You need to
Right.
do them in standing and walking, bring them into squats and lunges and other kind of exercises in your workout routines. And that's really how you train your pelvic floor is bring it into function and exercise.
Okay, so like if you're doing a squat, you can do it at the same time theoretically.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I will be able to bounce on a trampoline again.
That is my hope for you, Jade.
Okay. I hope that too.
A lot of it is birth. I mean,
Yeah.
vaginal births are really what kind of really transform the pelvic floor. If you have a perineal tear and episiotomy, those kind of do affect the pelvic floor muscles. If you push for a prolonged period of time, sometimes there can be like slight tears to the muscle called an avulsion. So those things can happen that affect the pelvic floor muscles in the long term. But you want to go into birth feeling like I've done everything I can to kind of physically prepare. We do a lot of research on, the best baby blankets and, shampoos. And you really want to also do that same bit for your body because that is where a lot of the transformation takes place.
Yeah, like I've been in the room while someone was giving birth before, and I found it so interesting because you sometimes don't even know how to push
Right.
properly. Like some people are
Totally.
pushing from their head, some people are pushing from, and so I like, the whole shitting the table thing is another
It's a
discussion.
real thing.
It's a
Yeah,
real thing.
totally.
It's a natural thing. It happens to the best of us. But does that mean you're pushing correctly? Like, should you be pushing from like the same that you would push for a poop?
Yeah. Interestingly, so many women go into birth and they're like, I don't know how to push. I'm like, of course you don't. You've never been taught. And then you're being forced to do it when you're medicated, anesthetized. You've got 8 people in the room and fluorescent lights. So, I have an entire online platform with strengthening exercises during pregnancy, but a childbirth preparation course. And it's not like how to swaddle the baby. It's like how to push your baby out and breathe because we don't teach women how to do this. So, you do want to be pushing. And I really encourage trying to exhale as you push instead of holding your breath. You can hold your breath as well, but know that some people when they exhale, they don't tighten up as much. You can push in different positions. So most often women are lying on their back, but you can ask to lie on your side, which can help as well. And then you can even use a mirror. I tell people to practice this during third trimester, to like get a mirror and practice pushing and bearing down like you're pooping, because your anal sphincter is opening up when you're pooping, and giving birth vaginally feels like you're about to take the biggest shit of your life. And I'm like, that's a good feeling, because that's where you want to be pushing. And that's why if you poop, it's like a good thing, because you're like, oh, did it right. Sphincter's opened up, birth canal is open. And even when during third trimester of pregnancy, I'll teach people how to push. And I give you videos and all this stuff to kind of practice it at home. But I'm like, when you have a bowel movement, like practice that bearing down and exhale to lengthen your pelvic floor, so that when you go into birth, you're not trying to do it for the first time.
Wow. Okay, but aren't people in their third trimester like scared that if they practice pushing, it's gonna like come out or something? They're
I
gonna
mean, your
like
baby,
spark labor?
no, so that's not, there's no research to know that will happen. You might pee your pants a little,
Yeah.
or like have a little shart, but you're not gonna have your baby. For birth to happen, your cervix, which is the opening to your uterus, has to thin and open. So we call that like
Yeah.
effacement and dilation. That happens organically with either oxytocin, uterine contractions, pitocin, things like that. So that has to happen before your pelvic floor muscles are even involved. So there's
Okay.
a kind of a physiologic process that needs to take place. And then once it comes to pushing, which is what we call the second stage of labor, that's when your pelvic floor muscles come into play to
Mm.
kind of help you get baby down the birth canal.
Okay, so is it natural, just to, give you the full visual of my pooping process? I feel like when you're pushing so hard, sometimes it's natural to like when you're done with that exhale, like you inhale and it all tightens up again. But I would get
Yeah.
scared that the head would like, I don't know, like get stuck or like be in a crazy position. Is the goal to just stay like relaxed and pushing the whole time? Or is it natural to recoil and, I don't know, have it all?
Yeah, a little bit of both. I think that some people have a high resting tone of their pelvic floor, which means we kind of are like naturally tighter down there.
Yeah.
Like that is me in my neck and shoulders. Like I'm
Yes.
on the computer, I get headaches, I have terrible posture, and I was like, I get headaches, I get migraines, I get neck pain. And it's because I hold so much tension in my neck and shoulders. A lot of people have that for their pelvic floors as well, especially if you're a workout person who does like bar and Pilates and things where we tighten, tighten, tighten a lot, but we don't necessarily focus on relaxation. And especially if you like Kegel your way through pregnancy and you don't focus on that relaxation piece, that can happen. So I think it's a little bit of like before you get into birth, really working on like internal massage, perineal massage, stretching, yoga, like things that will soften your hips and pelvis. And then when you go into birth, your pelvic floor is more relaxed and at rest versus kind of tight. But it does happen a lot when women are pushing during birth, that the head like sucks back in and then you push again. And what I would say in those situations is like that can totally happen. I would try changing positions. I would try pushing like by holding your breath if you've been breathing, or vice versa. And so there's different things you want to kind of utilize if you feel like you're holding on, breathing, lowering the lights, things like that can help your nervous system relax, and that will also help your body and your muscles relax.
Okay, because I even feel like, you can do all these exercises and everything and feel like you have some control over your pelvic floor. And then you get an epidural and you're like, I don't know what the fuck is going on down there,
I
right?
know.
Like,
Yeah, and so I always say, like, keep it low on the epidural. Like, you
yeah.
wanna it's fine to get. I think it can help with a lot of pain management and relaxation, but keep it low so that you can feel what's going on. And, the research is showing that it doesn't really make a difference when you get it 3 centimeters, 5 centimeters, 6
Okay.
centimeters. I do encourage folks to get it a little bit later, around 5 or 6 if they can make it centimeters, until if they can make it that long, just because I love movement. Like, I want you to
Yeah.
be able to move. And so if you're able to kind of move and around as much as possible until
Like
you get
bounce
to
on
the
the
later
ball.
stages, bounce on the
Okay.
ball, walk the
Yeah.
hallways, walk the stairs, move in bed. So that's kind of my goal. But I would say epidural, go for it, but late and low.
I know you mentioned the perineal massage.
Yeah,
Let
yeah.
me tell you, I don't know what is wrong with me. That just freaks me out. Like, first of all, I don't even know. I feel like at one point I won't even be able to reach my
Right.
vagina. But I just like, is it something I can like have my husband do? Like, what
Yeah.
is it? Is it just like massaging your vagina? And like, if I don't do it, like, will I die?
No, absolutely not. You will be okay and your vagina will be okay.
Okay.
So, the perineum is the area between the vaginal opening and the anal opening. And the area that you're actually
That's
massaging
what
is
you
like,
massage?
no, so the area you massage is the bottom half of the vaginal opening, and that kind
Oh,
of presses
jeez.
into the perineum. So you insert a thumb or a little device or your finger, and you go into the vaginal opening about like up to your first or second knuckle,
Yeah.
and you just press and hold it. And it's a muscle. It's like if you have a knot in your shoulder and you kind of put pressure on, you're like, oh, that's like so good. It hurts, but then it softens and relaxes.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Oh, really? So it doesn't feel like you wanna just die the whole time? Like, it
I mean,
sounds
it does a little
uncomfortable.
bit. It it
Yeah.
it it feels burny. It should feel a little bit burny, but it's just like
Oh,
when you press on a tight muscle.
yeah.
So a couple things I tell people are you don't really need to start that until like week 34 or 35 of
Okay.
pregnancy. You can do it on yourself. I tell people to sit on the toilet, the edge of a bathtub, lay reclined in bed, or even there are certain devices like Freedom Mom has one where you can like it looks like a shoehorn. You like wrap it around, stick it in the opening of your vagina um, to stretch the opening. And you just like put some pressure, stretch and hold, put some pressure, stretch and hold. The whole thing takes like 3 to 5 minutes. You can also have your partner do it. I will tell you, I had my husband do it to me during pregnancy. And I'm like, totally like vagina everything. I'm like,
Yeah.
vaginas are everywhere in my house. There's
Right.
bottles. Like I've
Right.
been doing this for 18 years. And I was like, I need you to do this massage to me. And he did it. And he was like, I don't really like this. And I was
Yeah.
like, you know what? I don't really like it either. Like, I don't need you. I'm
Ah.
just do this by myself. So I think
Oh
it could
my
go both
god, I mean,
ways.
women are heroes, man, like, that sounds horrific, like, oh, and you do it with, like, an oil or something, or, like,
You can
or
use
just
an oil, coconut oil, you can use a lubricant. You have so much discharge during pregnancy, to be honest, you may not even need anything. But, what the research shows is that it can minimize the risk of severe tearing, like what we call grade 3 and 4 tearing. It can decrease postpartum perineal pain, but it
oh,
won't prevent tearing. Like tearing
okay,
can still happen. So if you don't do it, you could still be fine. But if
okay,
you do it, sometimes it just helps people feel more prepared and more like relaxed at the opening for when they are pushing.
okay, so the tearing, like, that is so terrifying to me. Are there ways to prevent tearing? Are there ways to avoid it? Are there tell me all about tearing. Give me a tearing 101.
So it's really common. I would say, anywhere between 70 and 90% of vaginal births, people have some degree of perineal tearing.
Okay, so I
So,
just have to, like, make nice with it. I
so
just gotta make
yeah, just
peace.
know that
Okay.
like if it happens to you, you're in the majority of women. You did
And
nothing
they
wrong. It
just
just
stitch you up?
happens. It depends on the degree. So there's what's
Okay.
called a first degree tear that can be like as like slight as like a paper cut and you need like no
Oh,
stitches. There
okay.
can be a second degree tear which goes into that perineal muscle so it's a slight tear. A grade 3 or 4 tear are more severe and they go into the rectal muscles, either the anal opening or the rectal mucosa. So those are much more severe. They're more common with using forceps or a vacuum or a baby that has like
Right.
an arm by their head or something like that. So those are in kind of very rare cases, less than 10% of cases, but they do happen. If you
Okay.
have that, like you should go to pelvic floor therapy 100%. And those
Okay.
cases, they'll stitch you up. Everybody should go to pelvic floor therapy after having a baby. Um, but with tearing, the research is that certain positions minimize the risk of more severe tearing. So, like birthing on your side, like lying on your
Oh,
side versus doing something like a deep squat or even lying on your back, those can put you at a higher risk of tearing. Using a warm compress on the area during pushing can help or prior to pushing. That just helps soften the tissues. Um, a hands-off approach, which means no perineal massage when the baby's crowning. So like you can do perineal massage in preparation, but not during the actual crowning or kind of opening when the baby's coming out of the vagina. That is also helpful. And what we call spontaneous pushing. So spontaneous pushing is the opposite of coached. When you have coached pushing, it's like a nurse is like, okay, Jade, you're going to push right now and hold it for 10 seconds. And like, that's fine if it's with a uterine contraction. But if you're pushing and there's no uterine contraction, you're kind of just making it harder for yourself. So, pushing when you feel the contractions or when you see the contractions on the monitor. But it's really hard. I mean, birthing in hospitals, everything is very directed from like when you get induced and when you get an epidural and what position you lie in. And so it's a little bit of a tug of war, I think, between like traditional birthing practices, which are really focused on safety for mom and baby, which is of utmost importance. But from a pelvic floor perspective, we're often dealing with, symptoms that women are kind of left with when it's like, could we have done anything that could have helped at least minimize this, because they have a healthy baby and they're, healthy, but like their pelvic floor is, not doing great.
Right. Okay, so pelvic floor can heal, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I'm a pelvic floor therapist, and I mean, muscles are healing, like we
Yeah.
get knee surgeries and shoulder surgeries and back pain all the time. But left unattended, it typically doesn't get better. And this is where I really think postpartum physical therapy needs to be standard of care for women,
Yeah.
because your body has gone through so much. You may be lactating, your hormones are bananas after, and then you're like sent home and, like see you in 6 weeks. And
Right.
40% of women don't even attend that 6 week visit. So we get zero postpartum care.
Yeah, no, it is kind of crazy. So if you get a C-section, you have a C-section, is your pelvic floor compromised in a similar way or in a different way?
It's in a different way. So pregnancy itself changes your pelvic floor. So a lot of, whoever is pregnant will, have pelvic floor changes. So I don't want C-section moms to think like, I don't need pelvic floor therapy. I'm like, no, you actually need it, but for a different reason. So pelvic floor changes during pregnancy, but after a cesarean birth, you have scar tissue that can get kind of stuck and restricted in your abdominal wall. 7 layers of tissue and muscle are kind of cut through to get to the baby. So you've got
Right.
major abdominal surgery that you're healing from. So, we work a lot on rebuilding core strength, scar massage to cesarean scars that can be painful or tender or desensitized.
These massages, let me tell you, we need to rebrand, we need to rename the massage. Like these are painful freaking massages.
I like to say they're therapeutic, but they are
Yeah.
not comfortable. The
Woo.
amazing thing though is that I feel like when women come in to see us postpartum, they're relieved because they've never unpacked their birth and they feel very lost in their body. So just for
Right.
somebody to kind of give them attention and nurturing and caring and guidance on how to heal, which is again, like, all my online programs, I'm like, nobody's going to tell you how to take your first poop after childbirth. Nobody's going to tell you like how to pick up your baby after a C-section. Like these are the practical things we need to know to function, but we're not getting guidance on that.
Okay, so I've heard just by people that want to scare the shit out of me, literally, it's that first poop is like makes you see Christ. Like I am so scared of that first poop. Can you just tell me what is it about that? Can we make it easier? What's going on?
So, typically anytime you take pain medication or get anesthesia, you also don't get to drink fluids during birth sometimes. So you're dehydrated, that you have really hard stools. So, after birth, like very rarely do people have loose stools. It can happen, but you're constipated. And that first poop can literally feel like a baseball's coming out of your asshole. Like it
Yeah.
is a major. And
People
so
say sometimes it's worse than the labor itself,
it
than the
is. So what I tell people is take the stool softeners on day one. Like
okay.
take them. And if you're super constipated, like add in the Miralax or like bring in the troops because you have to get your stool soft. The other thing is walking is also major because that helps wake your colon up after anesthesia. So you need to get walking. Day one after a vaginal birth or a C-section, you need to get up and get moving. Use a walker, get a PT, get a nurse in there, but like you have to move around. And then when you have a bowel movement, I tell people like don't delay the urge to go, like
Okay.
go even if it feels scary, and do something that I call support the perineum. So I like everybody to have a stool under their feet when they're pooping, like a little squatty potty,
Love.
because it
Yeah.
elevates your feet. Yeah, if you don't use a squatty potty, I'm like you gotta I'll tell me and I'll Amazon you one because you're not pooping the right way and it will make all the difference in your life.
I'm so
But
happy you're pro squatty potty. I too
I'm
am pro
so
squatty
pro
potty.
squatty potty.
Yeah, I
Yes,
love it.
everybody needs to be. When I go to a friend's
Yes.
house and they don't have one, I'm like Amazon priming it. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is unacceptable.
100%. What are you, an animal? You need to have that. I know. I love it. Thank God I grew
So
up with a squatty potty.
so when you are pooping, feet on the squatty potty, exhale. So breathe out when you're pooping instead of holding your breath. And then take your hand that's kind of wrapped in toilet paper and hold your vagina up. So that's going to support any like tear or vaginal weakness that you have while you're bearing down to poop. So support the perineum and vagina as you bear down to poop. If you've had a vaginal birth, if you've had a C-section, place a small pillow or like a towel roll over your incision and then bear down to poop that way. But like support those vulnerable sites as you're pushing, hydrate, 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 stool softeners, stool softeners, stool softeners, and walk.
Because I would think that my organs were gonna come out of my vagina. Like, if I was pushing too hard again, I'd be like, I'm gonna birth something else that I don't
Or
intend
that
to."
like your stitches could pop, like
Yeah,
and that's why that support is really important. I literally want to just like print out pictures of how to do this to put in every labor and
I
like postpartum room
know.
for moms because I'm
They
like,
just
there's
are
a
like,
better
"Good luck."
way.
'Cause, like, I
No.
thought they used to just wait until your first poop for you to leave the hospital. Now they send you home before your first
Right.
poop.
Sometimes you just have to pass gas for them to know that your colon is moving. And it really depends, like if you had a vaginal birth versus a C-section, because a
No, I
C-section is
want,
a
like,
more severe
16
surgery.
nurses in there. I want 16 nurses in there. I want help. I would like a vacuum. I would like something else. Like, I need help in there. So, but the first pee is not easy either.
Right. So when you oftentimes, again, it's like anesthesia, you've had a catheter, your muscles are
Oh
exhausted.
god, the
Two
catheter.
two things typically happen after birth is that one, you like stand up and just pee your pants everywhere. Like everything is just kaput. And so
Yeah.
that is not unusual. It will typically get better with time. If you're still leaking anywhere between 6 to 12 weeks postpartum, like see a pelvic floor therapist because it's likely not the medication anymore. You're well past that. But the other thing that can happen is you can't pee. And I get this message on Instagram all the time. And they're like, I'm literally in the hospital and I can't pee and they're going to make me put a catheter back in. And this can happen after any surgery. So the reason is because either your muscles are so tight they can't relax, or your bladder is kind of like sleepy and it can't squeeze the urine out. So what we can focus on, there's two things. You sit down on the toilet. I'm like, turn on running water, turn on the
Mhm.
shower, even get in the shower and stand up if you need to. But like, run water, and that kind of can help be a trigger. Sit on the toilet. Your feet can be relaxed or on a squatty potty as well. Lean forward and just take big, deep breaths.
Okay.
When you take big, deep breaths, it kind of triggers your nervous system to like relax. And that's your
Yeah.
like pee and poop nervous system. So, deep breaths and relax, running water, put your hand in warm water, whatever you need to do. And then the other thing that's like a little hack is you can actually put peppermint oil, like the
I saw
aromatherapy
that.
oil, in toilet water. And it's like an old midwifery trick where the fumes from the peppermint oil kind of come up to the urethra, and you don't put it on your tissues. You just put it in the toilet water and you just sit there and breathe. And that can actually stimulate your urine stream.
Wow. That's a great hack. I feel like people need to know that. So, like, when people are pee shy, like when people like in a public bathroom can't pee, is that a sign of like a stiff pelvic floor, or is that like
It can lead to a stiff pelvic floor
okay.
because you're tightening your muscles to prevent urination, and that causes overly tight pelvic floor muscles. And then it can also lead to your bladder getting so big and stretched out that it doesn't squeeze the urine out effectively. So, what we see with this is you end up like don't have sensation. You lose sensation of when you actually get the urge. You have pelvic
Oh,
floor tension. So then you can't even like relax when you need to pee. And it can
yeah.
lead to urinary tract infections. Like you can get backed up. That leads to UTIs, kidney infections. I see men as well. And I had a gentleman who held his urine for so long, so consistently, that he ended up with kidney damage and was on a
Mm.
catheter forever. So it's one of those things that we don't talk about it, but it's not uncommon. And, that's why I tell people pee when you have the urge to go. And that should be between every 2 to 4 hours. Like, don't overhold it. If your profession, like you're a teacher or a medical provider, or, you don't like public toilets, like try not to hold it. Go when you have the urge to go. But you also don't want to be going every time you pass a bathroom, like those just in case peers who go all the time. So you need to go typically somewhere between 2 to 4 hours. During pregnancy and with aging, it's closer to 2 hours.
Yeah, when you're pregnant, you pee all the time, which is
All the
crazy. It's
time.
like, Jesus, you getting up every 4 seconds to pee, but you shouldn't hold it. So it actually is because I remember like back in the day when some idiot from high school told me that was like the benefit of holding your pee was that you would strengthen your pelvic floor muscles.
Yeah, no, that's totally incorrect.
Okay.
And so no, pee when you have the urge to pee. With pregnancy, it's very normal for you've got what's called like increased stasis. So you've got more urine that's kind of like sitting in your vessels and your urethra. I mean, like in your bladder. So you're kind of creating more urine, and you've got more fluid in your body, and you've got more blood flow. Urine is created from, waste from blood, and you're just filtering more blood in your kidneys. So very normal. Go when you have the urge to go. It's more like postpartum, don't keep going all the time. kind of get back to that like normal rhythm. The other thing I will say, because you mentioned it, is like you shouldn't do Kegels when you pee
Okay.
because your muscles should be relaxed when you pee,
Yeah.
not tightened. So you can do a Kegel like once to see if you're doing it properly when you're peeing, but you should not do Kegels when you pee.
Okay, this is so random, but I just also remember hearing this and you're gonna be like, Jade, you're crazy. But someone told me once that if like you're on a road trip and like, there's no exit like for a minute and you like have to hold your pee, if you think about having sex, it helps you not have to pee. Is there any science to that? And is it because like I know like after you have sex, you have to pee immediately. Like what's the connection between sex and pelvic floor and peeing?
So in that instance, it's just a total distraction of your brain. Like there's
Yeah.
no, so you could think about like cats. You could think
Right.
about your
Yeah.
grocery
Okay.
list. So it doesn't have to be sex. I mean, if that's what you think about, like that's amazing. But I would say that's an urge suppression technique. So if you have the urge to pee, you can like distract yourself. You can hold your pelvic floor tight. You can do deep breathing. Anything that kind of distracts your brain off of the constant, I have to go, is effective as an urge suppression technique. So
Okay.
you can totally do that. So thinking about sex in that situation is just whatever you're thinking about could
Oh,
distract you.
I thought there was like some signs because I'm like, I never pee while I'm having sex.
I
But
know.
so why do you have to pee after you have sex? What's
So
that connection?
it's interesting because the research is very like unclear as to if that's even necessary. But I will say the theory is that you have bacteria that's in the vaginal and vulvar area after intercourse, and
Oh,
that can, because the urethra is so short in women, that bacteria can kind of find its way up your urinary tract and lead to a urinary tract infection. So by urinating, you're kind of cleansing the urinary tract of potentially harmful bacteria that can lead to a UTI. Again, the science is like not even backing that, but I will say I do it. And I find
me
when I
too.
don't pee after sex, I'm like, feel like I'm getting a UTI. So
Me too. I freak out.
yes. So I do it. And it's that's a time where it's like okay to pee just in case, you know?
Okay. Okay. Because I always thought it was like your pelvic floor would stay cramped or whatever. And then like have to release it. Okay. I'm glad. That's so interesting. I did not know that. So let's
Yeah.
talk about the biggest crime against women, I think, in the world. After you give birth, that 6-week clear to have sex. So
Yeah.
I have talked to women about it. I've talked about it in other episodes. I just am appalled by what women share with me about that. Like, they're like, "Oh, I did it right after like, when my doctor gave me the clear, the okay," and it felt like a lightning rod was being shoved up my cooch. Like, they're like, there's no pleasure described. They're like, "You just have to break the seal. You just have to do it. You just have to." I'm like, "This all sounds horrific. Worse than the perennial massage." So, I'm like,
It
"What?"
probably
Like,
is.
well, yeah, it's probably horrific. So first of all, like, can we lobby to change this? And like, whose side are the doctors on?
Right. You know, this is another kind of artifact of just old medicine where there
Yeah.
isn't a ton of research as to say when is the best time for women to go back to having sex. And actually, the guidelines for when physicians should follow up with women after birth is that they're actually supposed to be following up 3 weeks after giving birth and having ongoing check ins and care until 12 weeks postpartum, which our medical system has not shifted towards that. That guideline was put out in 2018. So right now we have the 6-week visit where they check you. The majority of times they think, or the theory again is that by 6 weeks your cervix has kind of closed up a bit more, so you're at less risk of a uterine infection. So when you have intercourse at 6 weeks, it doesn't mean your body's ready. It means that
Right.
you might just not get an infection. And I see all of my patients at 6 weeks postpartum, and I'm like, 100%, the majority of them are not ready to go back to have sex. Some are. And I'm like, okay, girlfriend, go for it. Like, you're
Yeah.
great. The majority are not, especially if you've had a C-section, a perineal tear, prolonged pushing. Like, we're just not ready. And so, or even you just don't feel like it. So I'm like, it's an arbitrary number. Get your body, feel like you are healed. I like people to have no pain at rest before they return to sex. And if you have pain with sex, 9 out of 10 women have pain with sex the first time they go back after giving birth. And the things I tell you is like proactively use a lubricant. Like you're going to have vaginal dryness because your estrogen levels are low. So proactively use a lubricant. Take it super slow. Like think of the first sex session as like information gathering. Like I'm just here for data. Like
Yeah.
what positions work for me? Does it hurt? Am I bleeding? It's not going to be your steamy sex. And And it's also like you might be breastfeeding, milk might be leaking, you might be insecure about your body. Like it's just much more of a experience than just vagina in, if we're talking about heterosexual sex,
Yeah.
penis and vagina sex. Like it's much more complicated than that. And then, try very like the least penetrative positions, which is usually like lying on your back. Like I wouldn't try a doggy style or, maybe some people like being on top because then that helps them control the pace. So, but again, it's information gathering. No amount of pain is normal. Like, do not push through the pain. If it's painful, you pause and you come back in a week or two or when you're ready. But like, I have people who I waited until 12 weeks after my second birth and like, fine with me. Like, I was like, I don't care. I'm like,
Yeah, they'll
I'm sleeping in
survive.
the, yes,
Yeah, we will all survive.
yes,
But what blew my mind is I was talking to my friend who had a C-section, and I kind of thought, oh, if you have a C-section, your vagina is not torn, or like it won't be as painful. But she was saying that because of the estrogen, she was so dry that it was
yes.
still extremely painful. But she too, because we're taught nothing about our bodies, she was like surprised. She thought that she could go back sooner because she, didn't birth
Right.
vaginally.
So, vaginal dryness is caused from low estrogen levels, which, if you're breastfeeding or lactating, you have what's called high prolactin, which is a hormone that produces breast milk. In order to have that, you have low estrogen because it like suppresses your period, which is why we don't get a period for a long time. But also, low estrogen dries up your vagina. It's like a menopausal vagina. So, you have to use lubricant. I recommend this vulva moisturizer called Medicine Mama. It's like an olive oil based balm that you can put
Okay,
on the vulva and around the opening that is like a daily hydration to the tissues,
great. I'll put that
that
in the
can
show
really kind of
notes.
help keep them moisturized. So there's definitely things you can do, but with a C-section, actually more women have pain with sex after a C-section than a vaginal birth because
Wow.
their scar, like where their scar is on their belly, like that tissue also wraps around to the pelvic floor and that tissue gets really tight and tense. And
Ah.
so women don't realize that it could be also be their scar causing some of their pain. So just by working on the scar can also release some of this pelvic floor tension.
And is that something that you can do in your practice? Like, do you help with the scar and stuff too?
Yeah, pelvic floor
Okay.
physical therapist. We do a ton of scar massage. I have videos on this in my program as well because you can do it at home. Like I'll teach you how to do it, but you can do it
Okay.
at home as well. You can have a partner do it to you. And it's actually really healing, I think, for a lot of women. I mean, oftentimes C-sections are emergency situations. They can be very traumatic and you don't like want to touch your scar. You don't want to look at it. So it can be very healing, also, emotionally exhausting for people, but like a process that's actually really overall healing for them to work on their scar.
Okay. Oh my God. This is like so important. Like, I'm so lucky that I get to have this conversation with you. You
You're
guys, I hope
asking
you're all learning
amazing
so much.
questions.
I'm learning so much. I'm like, this is so important to me. Okay, so when you're pregnant or even not, let's talk about like how do you fully empty your bladder properly? And like that's super important whether you're pregnant or not, right? Like when you're
Right.
peeing, like some people don't empty their bladder because we're rushing. You should never push out your pee, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
hallelujah. It's so wild because I posted a reel about this on Instagram and TikTok and it went viral and there were 43 million people who were like watching a post about how to not push when you pee. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, we need to know this
Yeah.
information."
Sometimes you're in a rush.
So,
You're like, shit,
w
I gotta
we're
go.
in a rush. We don't want to, we're in public toilets and we're hovering instead of sitting down.
Yes.
We as women, men do this too, but like we are efficient and we're like, we want to move on to the next thing, and like including after our pee. So the proper way to pee is to sit, chill, and breathe. Don't push. So you just sit down, your feet are open, your knees are wide, you lean forward and just take some deep breaths. Again, that helps your pelvic floor relax and your bladder contract to empty the urine. If you feel like you don't empty completely, I say like shake your hips up and down, side to side, stand up and then sit down again. That's called double voiding. And that can help you get out those last few drops without feeling like you have to push them out.
Wow. Okay. And you don't need a squatty potty when you pee.
You don't have to have one. You can
Okay.
use one if it's available or if you have a really high toilet, but you can pee without one. But if it's available and you want to try it and you have maybe some pelvic floor tension, you can use it. But it's not necessary for peeing like it is for pooping.
Okay. But we all do the hover, right? Like if we're like, sanitary individuals, we're in a public bathroom, it's disgusting. We're in a gas station. You maybe are just not going to get a good pee. That like, what do? You have to hover, right?
You do. And so the ways I would say it's like if you can line the toilet seat with paper, like do it, you know. Hovering just shouldn't be your standard practice. Like it's gonna have to happen. We were on a road trip recently and we had to pull over on the side of the road to pee. And I like had to pee in front of my husband's car on the side of the highway. And
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this is not my first time. I
Sure.
grew up in New Orleans where during
Yeah.
Mardi Gras, this is like training for you in high school.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay, I'm hovering. So I like lean forward on my elbows, try to relax and take deep breaths. And so you can do it, just don't push. Like
Okay.
use the door handle to hang on to, put a hand on the sidewall, lean onto your elbows, like anything that can kind of help you relax as you are like squatting and breathing to just help your bladder empty.
Okay. Oh my God, this is so important. I feel like I'm gonna think about you every time I pee now.
Everybody tells me that all the time. Like every time I pee, I think of you, Sarah. I feel like, okay, well then my work here is done.
Right? I know, I can't wait to think of you. So similarly, I just went recently on vacation, and I feel like the further I go, the harder it is for me to poop. I get that vacation constipation, and I am like, you're like trying to feel cute. If you're on a bathing suit or something, you just feel like so bloated. And every time the first poop, whether it's like 5 days in, I'm like, it's like a celebration. It's like the best moment of my life. But you have ways to combat that. So what can you do other than like, I mean, I don't even know. And why do we have vacation constipation?
When we're on vacation or we're traveling, we're out of our routines. We are eating different foods. We're probably dehydrated. I mean, those are the biggest factors. One of the things that can help the most is actually movement. So, like, if you're in Europe or where I'm like, walk, like, walking is key. I can eat like shit when I go to New York City, but I'm walking so much that my poops are amazing. So, movement is key. Hydration is key. Like you might be drinking wine or sodas or whatever. And I'm like, you have to keep yourself hydrated. The tip I tell people is you want to pee so that your urine's almost clear. It should look like light colored lemonade. It should not be dark or bright. If it is, that means you are not hydrated enough. So making sure that you're staying hydrated. You need to eat fiber rich foods, which is like, we hear this all the time, but like, what the hell is that? It's like, literally fruits, vegetables. Like a salad doesn't have that much fiber. Like you have to have like oatmeals and even bring Metamucil with you or natural fiber. Like, and then when I travel, I take these little gummies called Natural Calm Magnesium gummies, and they're like look like little gumdrops, but magnesium helps draw water into your colon to keep your poop soft. So I like anticipate that I'm going to have that, and I just automatically bring those with me, and I take them at night before bedtime. And also, they have travel squatty potties. Like if you can travel with a travel squatty potty or turn that hotel trash can on its side to elevate your feet, like try to get into that squatting position for pooping, and that will help too.
Let me tell you, the trash can turning it over for the squatty potty, like if your parents didn't teach you that or whomever, if you haven't learned that yet, like you're welcome. Like that is
I know.
so important. But
I'm like,
I
I know. I can tell you all the hotel chains. I'm like, okay, Hilton has square garbage cans turn on the side.
yeah.
Marriott round, not as effective as a squatty potty. I mean, it's like I can tell you the hotel trash can
Like sometimes
situation.
I'll put my feet up on the toilet itself. Like I'm
Yeah, a lot of
flexible.
people
I'm
do
like,
that.
yeah. But I heard again from like just my crazy sources that it's like your body knows you're not home, so it doesn't feel like safe to poop. Is that part of it?
It could be. I don't know any like scientific research to back
Yeah.
that up, but I would say that it could. Like it could
Yeah.
be your rest and digest nervous system is like your chill nervous system. Like when we are uptight or anxious or stressed, like think about like your asshole tightens up, right?
Yeah.
And so when you're like chill and relaxed, that's when our body's kind of digesting and relaxing, and that helps with pees and poop. So it could be that your nervous system is more upregulated where or your schedule's off or whatever the case may be, where you just don't get that same kind of relaxation that can help with bowel movements.
Right. Okay. Okay. And my last question is what are the 3 tools you have to have for your pelvic floor? Like I loved this on your Instagram.
Hands down a squatty potty. Like
Yes.
that's every bathroom in my house has one.
This episode
Um,
is brought to you by Squatty Potty.
I know. I like have no financial affiliation with them. And
Yeah.
people are like, why not? I'm like, I don't know. But
I
I
know.
just
They should
am
give you one.
an organic fan. Squatting helps relax your pelvic floor muscles. If you think about even how you give birth, right? You're lying on your back, your knees are
Yeah.
up towards your chest, you're in a squatting position. So squatting helps relax your pelvic floor muscles. And one of the ways that we can do that for bowel movements is with that stool under our feet. The other thing is what I call a trigger point wand. So this is something you can use for perineal massage, but a lot of women have tension in their pelvic floors. And this little wand, it almost looks like a little I don't know, like a little S-shaped device. You insert it into the vagina and you press gently on your pelvic floor muscles. And it's almost like an internal massager to release tension. I think that that's a really important one as well. I mentioned the vulva balm. I mean, if you're on hormonal birth control, if you're postpartum, if you're perimenopausal or menopausal, you're going to have vaginal dryness and vulvar dryness. People don't realize that that is a trigger for painful sex. So,
Oh.
like, these are things that everybody needs to have in their, repertoire of things to use for their pelvic floor. And so, I mean, if, it's so funny because I'm like, other influencers get like, I don't know, like Birkin bags. I'm like, I
Yeah.
get like lube and vaginal massagers. I mean, I'm like, but here we are, you know?
Yeah, like, will you send me some, like, 2 links or, like, for the vulva bomb
Oh,
and for the
yeah, for
wand?
sure.
Okay, because where do you even what do you even put into Amazon? Like, or your Google search for that? I don't even know.
I know. My Google search is bananas, but yes, absolutely. I'll send those over your way. And these are things that, I have a ton of resources on my website, everything from like the best lube and the best pregnancy belly supports and, pooping after giving birth. It's just, I went through this 10 years ago with when I gave birth to my first son. And I thought, I have so much information because I'm in this field. Like, what are people doing when they're not in this field? Like,
Right.
I just got lucky and I know how to care for my pelvic floor, particularly during pregnancy and postpartum, and now in perimenopause. And like, every woman deserves access to this information, and we're just not getting it. And so that's really what I aim to give women by, my online programs and my book and my Instagram is just ways to understand their body better to help prevent and overcome pelvic floor problems.
Amen. You are doing the Lord's work. I'm like, I should have taken notes. I'm gonna listen back to this episode and take notes because we all need this information. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me. These were such great conversations to have, and I think so many women are going to benefit from hearing what we share today.
I'm so glad to have your number now because I'm gonna just text you and be like, so
I'm
I'm
like the
on the
Vagina
toilet.
Whisperer on call for many
Yeah.
people. Don't even hesitate.
Thank God. Well, thank you so much. It was so nice to meet you.
Thanks for having me.